One person who didn't testify was Kristi Noem, the head of Homeland Security, and she's going to testify. And when she does, it's going to be ugly. She's been trying to avoid going before the House and Senate Homeland Security committees. And there's this new piece in the Wall Street Journal. It is so damning. I'd be surprised if she's still around in 2 weeks to testify. However, Trump needs scapegoats, so I don't think he's going to fire her. She is a useful idiot. The article is entitled "A Pilot Fired Over Kristi Noem's Missing Blanket and the Constant Chaos Inside the DHS, Department of Homeland Security." It was published by the Wall Street Journal on Friday, February 13th. It's written by Michelle Hackman, Josh Dawsey, and Tarina Party. Now, the Wall Street Journal is a great newspaper. It's owned by Rupert Murdoch. It is a great newspaper. Its editorial board should rot in hell, but their reporters are honest. They cover Wall Street. And if you're looking to make a case against capitalism, read the Wall Street Journal. Read Bloomberg. Just don't read their editorials. So this story on Kristi Noem is just horrendous. According to the article, if you were to ask anybody in the White House, deep in the White House, close to Trump in the Oval Office, they believe their biggest problem right now is the management of the Department of Homeland Security. They believe Kristi Noem and the ICE operations are a political liability. They don't believe the mission is a political liability. They believe the way it's being carried out by Kristi Noem is a liability. But she was hired precisely because she's an idiot, an ambitious idiot. So this is why fascists eventually fail. They destroy millions of lives, but eventually they fail because the only people who will work for a authoritarian or a fascist is a morally craven, ambitious idiot like Kristi Noem. And then there's the issue of Corey Lewandowski. Now, if you listen to my show, I talk a lot about Corey Lewandowski, and he's mentioned in this article in the Wall Street Journal. So, according to the Wall Street Journal, Corey Lewandowski and Kristi Noem aren't even hiding their affair. He serves as her de facto chief of staff. He's not the official chief of staff. And the word is Kristi Noem, for her own personal security, has moved into Coast Guard housing for safety. And Corey Lewandowski is seen constantly going in and out of her apartment. There's also the problem of his being called a special government employee, meaning he can only work for the federal government for 130 days. And after 130 days, he has to disclose his financials. He doesn't want to disclose his financials. For all we know, he may not even be able to get security clearance. So he still claims he hasn't worked 130 days. And he's playing tricks like working from home or sneaking into the Department of Homeland Security building without swiping his badge. So there's no computer record of his working more than 130 days. We've been over that on this show. It's in the Wall Street Journal article. Rodney Scott, who testified Thursday, is the Border Patrol commissioner. And according to the Wall Street Journal, Noem and Lewandowski see him as a threat, and they're trying to cut him off at the knees, reportedly telling him he has no say over any Border Patrol or ICE operations in Minnesota, Chicago, or Los Angeles. And according to the Wall Street Journal, they're trying to make life so horrible for him, he quits. And then there's border czar Tom Homan, seen here, about to eat another baby. He hates, that's a good picture of Tom Homan, by the way. I like that. That's a good picture of Tom Homan. That's what he sees when he looks in the mirror. That's what Tom Homan sees when he looks in the mirror. I'm using a special lens. So Tom Homan hates Kristi Noem. She hates him. And Trump plays the two against each other. That's how he manages people. And it doesn't matter what they think about border policy because White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller is running the show. And Kristi Noem said that. She said, after Alex Preddy was murdered. She and Lewandowski were called into the Oval Office to discuss her future, and she came out and said, "I'm just following Stephen Miller's orders." That's what she said. "I'm just following orders." Where have I heard that before? So Noem and Lewandowski are thinking about Kristi Noem's next job. They think she can be president. They think she can get the Republican nomination. As I've said, she's certainly stupid enough to get the Republican nomination. So Noem, according to the Wall Street Journal, screams at her staff whenever Tom Homan appears on television. If she feels Tom Homan, the border czar, is getting more face time on television than she is, she screams at her staff. The Journal writes about the $200 million of your money that the Department of Homeland Security spent producing Noem's Leave Now commercials, where she sits on a horse in chaps and a cowboy hat in front of Mount Rushmore, telling immigrants to self-deport. I saw 3 seconds of that commercial, and I tried to self-deport. A large chunk of that $200 million ad budget went to the husband of Tricia McLaughlin. She's the official spokesliar for Homeland Security. Her husband got a couple of $1 million to produce some of those commercials. And Trump is reportedly upset that $200 million has been spent on this crap because he knows it has nothing to do with border security. It's all about burnishing Kristi Noem's image so she could run for president in 2028. It's you and I paying $200 million for her campaign advertising. Then there are the 2 private jets that she authorized the purchase of for her and Corey. Each one costs more than $70 million, and they're completely tricked out. They have a private cabin in the back with suites, beds, a shower, which, according to the Wall Street Journal, she and Corey Lewandowski share, that they sleep in the back of the jets as they travel around on one of the 2 private jets they bought for themselves with your money. At the same time, the Department of Homeland Security can't cut a check for more than $100,000 to an outside contractor unless it's first approved by Noem, but really Corey Lewandowski. That's why he's like making deals with contractors why? Because when he's no longer the de facto Homeland Security Chief of Staff, he goes to the contractors and says, "Hey, you made a lot of money off me. Give me a job where I don't have to come in." That's how it works, the revolving door. So she bought 2 jets for her and Corey, but she won't allow anybody to spend more than $100,000 without Corey authorizing it. As I keep reminding you, when the flash floods hit central Texas last July, it took Kristi Noem 3 days to approve payment for a search and rescue team of helicopters. But by then, 3 days, it was too late to find any of their survivors. 137 ended up dead. Well, Corey Lewandowski has been charged by police in Jupiter, Florida, as well as by several women. He's been accused by several women of physical and sexual assault. He was arrested in Jupiter, Florida. They didn't prosecute, or maybe they did. According to the Wall Street Journal, despite being arrested, despite countless women stepping forward, accusing him of physical and sexual assault, Corey Lewandowski desperately wants the Department of Homeland Security to issue him not just a badge, but also a gun. But he's had 0 training. So that means he should be working for ICE. If he's had no training, he should be working for ICE. A lawyer for ICE refused to issue the badge and the gun. An ICE lawyer said no, he has no training, and he's not an official government employee, which means he hasn't had the security screening, no gun. That lawyer, who refused to sign off on the gun and the badge, was immediately demoted by Kristi Noem. And according to the Wall Street Journal, Lewandowski, who's not allowed to wear a Homeland Security badge, has been seen walking around wearing a badge. Then there's this lovely tidbit about Kristi Noem's favorite blanket. She has a favorite blanket. When she and Corey were flying together on a U.S. Coast Guard jet, the pilot gathered up all her belongings when she exited, and the pilot was supposed to bring all her stuff to the car. And when the pilot delivered all her stuff, Corey and Kristi realized the pilot forgot to bring her favorite blanket. He thought the blanket belonged to the Coast Guard, so he left it on the plane. He didn't know it was Kristi Noem's favorite blanket. And reportedly, Corey Lewandowski had a meltdown and fired the pilot because of his carelessness. He didn't bring the blanket. The pilot was eventually rehired because there's a staffing shortage. Gee, I wonder why. Meanwhile, Kristi Noem is a horrible, horrible monster, a puppy killer who is stupid and lies with abandon. When Alex Preddy and Renee Good were executed by federal agents, Kristi Noem immediately called them domestic terrorists. Remember? Gary Peters is the senior U.S. Senator from Michigan. He is the ranking member of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. And I'm going to play a clip. I'm going to show you why it's horrible that Kristi Noem called Alex Preddy and Renee Good domestic terrorists. I'm going to show you why it's not just irresponsible, why it's not just an impeachable offense, borderline criminal. I'm going to show you, and she's been warned. She kept calling Abrego Garcia, the kid from Maryland who got sent to the dungeon in El Salvador. She kept calling him a domestic terrorist, and a judge told her to knock it off. You're tainting the jury pool. She wouldn't stop. Here is Senator Peters, Democrat, on Thursday, asking ICE Director Todd Lyons and Rodney Scott, the current commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. He wants to know, how is it that Kristi Noem concluded within hours after the execution of Renee Good and Alex Preddy that they were domestic terrorists?
The video is very clear. And yet we had the Trump administration claim that he was attempting to inflict mass casualties. You're going to have to explain how you had that come to that, how the Trump administration came to that conclusion when you can't even come to the conclusion that he may have been resisting when he was laying flat on his back with being beaten. How did they come to the fact that he was going to have those mass casualties? And then, quote, Secretary Noem said he was committing, quote, an act of domestic terrorism. What you saw in the video, is that what you train your officers? Someone laying on the ground, that's an act of domestic terrorism? Commissioner Scott and Acting Lyons, did you provide Secretary Noem with an assessment of what Mr. Preddy was engaged in and that he was engaged in domestic terrorism? Is that why she said that? Is because you told her? That was your belief at that time? Even though you need an awful lot of investigation now to know exactly what happened. Are you the ones that told her that?
No, sir.
No, sir. Did anyone who reports to either of you provide this assessment to Secretary Noem that this was mass casualty, or he was attempting to inflict mass casualties and domestic terrorism? Did someone in your staff tell her that?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
No, so why would Secretary Noem, why would she tell the public that this was an act of domestic terrorism when right in the heat of the moment? How would she possibly come to that kind of conclusion to tell the American public that when they're watching this video?
I can't speculate on what someone else would say or why, sir.
Mr. Lyons?
Sir, I can't speculate to what the Secretary thought at that time, sir.
So it seems to me a really big question, which means that we have to have Secretary Noem here. She deserves it to the American people deserve to have the Secretary, the person who is responsible to, you are responsible to, and all the men and women ICE answer to her. She needs to be before this committee. She ducks coming out in public and talking and hasn't accepted prior invitations to come to this committee. I would hope the chairman would invite her, because this is an important question. How could you come to those conclusions, those narratives, before any evidence was there, even after all that's happened since then? You two are telling me you don't have enough evidence, even though it looks so clear on the video. It should have looked really clear to her if she looked at the video, if she had it that close. A lot of this got posted pretty quickly. How she came to those conclusions, I don't expect you to know that. You didn't provide any information to her, which makes me question it even more. If she got no information from you in the chain of command, how would you come up with that kind of narrative if the chain of command wasn't doing it?
Okay, so that testimony from Todd Lyons and Scott on Thursday, different from their Tuesday testimony before the House. Okay, here is Senator Maggie Hassan. She's a Democrat from New Hampshire. Are you beginning to see why it's so actionable for Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller and Tricia McLaughlin, the spokesliar from the Department of Homeland Security, to call Alex Preddy, Renee Good, domestic terrorists? They call everyone if everyone's a domestic terrorist, then nobody's a domestic terrorist. It loses the value of its currency. Here's Senator Maggie Hassan. This is pretty great.
Mr. Lyons, were Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists?
Ma'am, while that investigation's ongoing, to my knowledge, no.
Okay, that's big. That's a headline, because he wasn't willing to say that on Tuesday. That's huge.
In your testimony on Tuesday, you said that you don't want to comment on these ongoing investigations because you don't want to, quote, impede or, quote, bias the investigation. Is that what you said? Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So Secretary Noem and Stephen Miller have called Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists. So did Secretary Noem and Stephen Miller's comments impede or bias the investigations?
Ma'am, I don't want to comment on what comments they made.
Okay, so he's pulling back. Okay, let's keep listening.
But again, I don't want to put my finger on the scales of the investigation.
Well, I understand you don't speak for them, and I'm not asking you to. I'm asking whether having the Secretary of Homeland Security and the President's Homeland Security advisor call the subjects of an ongoing investigation domestic terrorists, whether their doing that impedes or biases those investigations.
See? So if you call them domestic terrorists, you're putting, as he said, your thumb on the scale. You're not allowing the investigation to be objective, and you're tainting the jury pool, which is why they can't win in the courts more.
Look, your testimony doesn't make any sense. If it would impede or bias the investigations for you to say right now, when you know a lot more than we did right after the shootings, whether Renee Good or Alex Preddy were domestic terrorists, if you saying that today would impede or bias the investigations, then why wouldn't it impede or bias the investigations for Secretary Noem and Stephen Miller to say the same thing about the same people?
Any comments that are made publicly, privately, text, email, or Instagram post, whatever, is gonna put a bias on the information.
Okay. So that is important. So I take it that you are saying that Secretary Noem and Stephen Miller were wrong to say what they said.
No, ma'am. Again, I can't speak to them, but what I'll just say to is, again, career law enforcement officer, myself and Mr. Scott, we won't speak to those type of things because we don't want to put out.
Are you not kind of just being straightforward here and saying what's obvious because you're worried that if you do, you'll be fired?
No, ma'am.
The fact that you're unwilling to admit that Secretary Noem and Stephen Miller were wrong to say what they did, that they impeded and biased the investigation, is indicative of the complete failure of leadership at DHS and at all levels of this administration.
So there are people fighting for our country. They're in the Senate. They're in the House. This is Jonathan Ross. He is the ICE agent who shot Renee Good. I say allegedly because there's an ongoing, there isn't an investigation into him yet. But here is Arizona Democrat Senator Ruben Gallego. Now, I bleeped the F word. I don't think you need to say it. I think it's, but here is Ruben Gallego. Senator Ruben Gallego served our nation, I believe, in Iraq or maybe Afghanistan. I apologize. And he's just got elected to the Senate in 2024, Democrat.
After Renee Good was shot, the agent called her I quote, a fucking bitch on camera. Yes or no? Is this how your agents are trained to act? And I'll go to Chairman Scott. Chairman, Mr. Scott.
No, sir.
Is that professional
No,
in that
sir.
regard?
Yeah. Now, last time I checked, Jonathan Ross still on duty. More from Arizona Democrat Senator Ruben Gallego.
Your agents, Director Lyons, are trained in weapons handling, correct?
Yes, sir.
If you look at the Renee Good shooting, why is the agent holding a camera phone and a weapon at the same time?
So, sir, I don't want to comment on the ongoing investigation just because that's still being determined at this time. But could I just go back to one thing, sir, that you mentioned
No,
earlier?
I want to ask further questions on this. Has there ever been an order to any agents, CBP agents in Minnesota or other place, for them to be recording on their personal phones to essentially be somewhat social influencers or to pass, the media on to up? Has there ever been any orders given for people to be holding or for agents to be recording while they're, doing these stops or engaging with the public?
Sir, there's never been an order to do that. Agents have used it as far as if they were going to make an arrest, say, on an agitator. The U.S. attorney was requiring to have video leading up to the event, so officers have used that for that.
For video from a handheld, from a phone?
If they had a body camera available, from the body camera or from any type of recording device.
But the reason there's a difference is because the body cam is designed for a police officer or law enforcement to engage while still being able to have full scope of knowledge what's happening, be able to detain, be able to escalate if they need to escalate. What I saw and what the world saw for me is the fact that there was an agent that was moving around a vehicle with a camera phone, recording, and his hand on the weapon. In what world, in what training between all of your training in weapons handling, have you ever been taught what the appropriate use of you holding a weapon and at the same time recording on a camera phone? Did you have any of that type of training at all in your time in ICE, law enforcement, or through CBP?
No, sir, I haven't. But again, we look at every instance, no matter what it is. So
shouldn't there be some kind of command or directive that comes down from CBP headquarters, knowing that this is unprofessional conduct that probably created and put the officer and probably the civilian in a situation that ended up escalating to a shooting, that maybe you shouldn't be holding a camera out, trying to be influencer, and wielding a weapon at the same time?
So we all saw the videos. We all know what the truth is. If you pay attention to what's going on when people are sworn under oath, it's a different conversation than what you see on Fox and CNN when people are arguing. You can get away with saying, she tried to run him over. You watch a Senate congressional hearing, you're under oath. It's a different conversation, a much better conversation. This is C-SPAN. These hearings are way more important than the food fights on network or on the news networks. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up.